Imagine for a moment that your brain is not a fixed machine, but more like soft clay, constantly being shaped and reshaped by every thought, habit, and experience you have. Most people think their brain is set in stone, that the way they think, feel, or behave is just who they are. But neuroscience shows something completely different. Your brain is rewiring itself every second, and once you learn how to guide that process, you can literally change your life from the inside out. Here's the surprising truth. Every time you think a thought, you strengthen a neural pathway. It's like walking down a trail in the woods. The more you walk it, the clearer and easier it becomes. That's why negative thinking or old habits feel automatic. They're just deeply carved brain trails. But here's the exciting part. Your brain is constantly pruning and creating new connections. If you choose to redirect your focus, you can build completely new trails, and the brain will eventually favor them over the old ones. This is what's known as neuroplasticity, and it's why scientists say the brain is like a muscle. The more you exercise a pattern, the stronger it gets. For example, studies show that practicing gratitude for just 2 minutes a day can literally shift activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates mood and decision-making. People who do this consistently begin to feel calmer, more motivated, and more resilient. Not because of magic, but because their brain circuitry physically changes. Here's something fascinating. The brain doesn't always know the difference between what you vividly imagine and what you actually experience. Athletes have used visualization to enhance performance for decades, but now brain scans confirm it. The neurons fire as if the action is real. That means if you spend time imagining yourself confident, focused, and capable, your brain is practicing those states and wiring them in as if they were already part of you. Of course, this works both ways. If you replay worries, failures, or fears over and over, your brain strengthens those circuits too. That's why people feel trapped in cycles of anxiety or self-doubt. But once you realize you can redirect the spotlight of your attention, you hold the power to sculpt your own mind. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. Pick one small positive habit you want to grow. Maybe pausing to take 3 deep breaths before reacting, or writing down one win from your day each evening. Each time you repeat it, you're laying down a new neural pathway. At first it feels awkward, but repetition literally coats that pathway in myelin, a fatty insulation that makes signals travel faster. Over time, what once felt forced becomes your brain's new autopilot. And here's the key most people miss. Consistency beats intensity. You don't have to meditate for an hour a day or overhaul your entire life overnight. Tiny, repeated actions create massive structural changes in your brain. It's like drops of water carving stone. At first it seems slow, but eventually it shapes everything. So the real question is, what do you want your brain to look like a year from now? Because whether you realize it or not, you are wiring it every single day with your thoughts, habits, and focus. Your future self is being built right now. And once you understand that your brain is not fixed but flexible, you stop waiting for change and start creating it. One thought, one choice, one pathway at a time. And think about how this plays out in everyday situations. When you wake up and immediately check your phone, you're training your brain to crave instant stimulation. But if you start your morning with even a few minutes of mindful breathing or reflection, you're wiring in focus and calm. Over weeks and months, the difference becomes dramatic. Not because life changed, but because your brain did. Neuroscientists have found that even our emotions are shaped this way. Every time you let yourself linger on frustration or stress, you strengthen the networks that make those feelings easier to access. But when you practice shifting attention toward curiosity, gratitude, or problem-solving, your brain begins to default to those states. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about teaching your mind new responses, rewiring the automatic pathways that run in the background. What's really fascinating is that the brain is most plastic when it's exposed to novelty. Learning a new skill, traveling somewhere unfamiliar, even taking a different route home. All of these force your brain to build new connections. That's why people who keep learning and exploring often stay sharper and more adaptable as they age. The brain thrives on challenge, and every time you push yourself into new territory, you're literally sculpting new circuitry. Even movement plays a role. Aerobic exercise increases levels of BDNF, a protein neuroscientists call miracle grow for the brain. It helps neurons grow and connect, making it easier to rewire habits and thought patterns. This means every workout isn't just shaping your body. It's fertilizing the soil of your brain for transformation. Sleep is another hidden rewiring tool. While you're resting, your brain is pruning unnecessary connections and strengthening important ones, almost like an overnight editor cleaning up the day's experiences. Skipping sleep doesn't just make you tired, it interrupts the very process that allows change to stick. And then there's the social aspect. The brains of people around you are constantly influencing your own through a process called neural mirroring. When you spend time with someone optimistic, motivated, and growth-oriented, your neurons begin to reflect that pattern. Likewise, being around negativity reinforces those circuits instead. Who you surround yourself with isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's a rewiring choice. Every small interaction, every repeated thought, every habit is sending a signal, and the brain is listening. It doesn't judge whether it's good or bad, it simply adapts, reshapes, and locks in what you feed it. That's why awareness is so powerful. Once you realize your brain is always changing, you can take charge of the direction it changes in. And consider how attention acts like currency in the brain. Wherever you invest it, neurons fire and those firings wire together. That means even scrolling through endless distractions is a form of training, teaching your brain to crave novelty without depth. Over time, this makes it harder to focus on meaningful tasks because the brain has literally rewired for quick hits of stimulation. But when you deliberately direct attention to one thing at a time, whether it's reading, learning, or even just being fully present in a conversation, you're building circuits for concentration, patience, and depth. There's also the role of language. The words you repeatedly use don't just describe your reality, they shape your brain's perception of it. When you say, "I'm always anxious," or "I can't do this," you're rehearsing those pathways. But shifting your language, even slightly, like saying, "I'm learning to stay calm," or "This is challenging, but I can grow through it," activates different circuits, reinforcing a more adaptive pattern. Neuroscientists call this self-directed neuroplasticity, and it's one of the most powerful tools you have. Diet even comes into play. Foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and certain vitamins have been shown to support synaptic growth and brain flexibility. Meanwhile, chronic stress and high sugar intake can shrink areas like the hippocampus, which is essential for memory and learning. Every meal is, in a way, a message to your brain about how well it can function and adapt. What's especially interesting is how the brain responds to challenge and struggle. When you push yourself just beyond your comfort zone, whether practicing an instrument, learning a language, or solving a complex problem, the brain releases chemicals that promote growth. It's in the discomfort, the slight frustration, that rewiring happens most powerfully. Avoiding challenge may feel easier, but it starves the brain of the stimulus it craves to adapt and evolve. And then there's mindfulness. When you practice observing thoughts instead of getting lost in them, you weaken the automatic grip of old pathways. Brain scans show that regular mindfulness practice actually reduces activity in the default mode network, the system that fuels rumination, and strengthens the prefrontal regions that give you control over attention. With time, this practice literally carves new grooves of awareness and calm into your neural structure. All of this shows that the brain is never idle. Even when you're resting, daydreaming, or simply repeating old habits, rewiring is happening. The question is whether you're letting it happen by default or guiding it with intention. Every choice of focus, every practice, every repetition is shaping the architecture of your mind in ways that can last a lifetime. Think about how emotions themselves are like practice sessions for the brain. Every time you feel anger and replay it, you strengthen the neural networks for anger. Every time you return to worry, you reinforce anxiety. But if you practice calm breathing when stressed, or gratitude when things go wrong, your brain begins to lay down pathways that make those reactions easier next time. Over time, this isn't just about managing emotions, it's about transforming the default emotional wiring your brain runs on. Another layer to this is music. Neuroscientists have discovered that listening to or playing music activates multiple regions of the brain at once: the auditory cortex, motor areas, even emotional centers. Learning to play an instrument, in particular, forces the brain to create new cross-network connections, which makes it one of the most powerful ways to increase plasticity. That's why people who engage with music often show greater memory, creativity, and even resilience under stress. Visualization, too, has incredible power. Athletes who mentally rehearse movements can improve performance almost as much as physical practice because the same circuits light up as if they were really moving. The brain takes mental rehearsal as a cue to strengthen those pathways. This means if you consistently visualize yourself staying calm in high-pressure moments, or succeeding at a skill, you're giving your brain the exact repetitions it needs to make that your default reality. Even your environment is part of the equation. A cluttered space signals chaos and overload, while an organized and inspiring environment signals focus and clarity. Your brain is constantly scanning surroundings and adjusting stress responses, attention, and energy levels to match. By intentionally designing your environment, whether it's adding natural light, reducing clutter, or surrounding yourself with cues of what you want to become, you're nudging your brain toward those patterns every single day. And social learning amplifies everything. When you watch someone else perform a skill, mirror neurons in your brain fire as though you were doing it yourself. This is why mentorship, community, and even the stories you consume matter so much. Your brain is simulating those experiences and wiring them in, even if you're not consciously aware of it. Spend time with people who live the habits you want to adopt, and your brain will begin practicing them alongside theirs. Stress adds another dimension. Short bursts of stress can actually sharpen focus and promote growth, but chronic stress floods the brain with cortisol, damaging connections in the hippocampus and weakening memory and learning. Building resilience practices like breathing, journaling, or exercise doesn't just feel good. It literally protects and repairs brain structures, keeping them flexible and strong. And all of these processes are happening simultaneously. While you're focusing, moving, eating, resting, imagining, or interacting, your brain is reshaping itself second by second. It doesn't take a break. It doesn't stop sculpting, which means the real power lies in recognizing that every small act is part of the wiring process, whether you choose it or not. And the deeper you explore this, the more you see that rewiring your brain isn't about sudden breakthroughs. It's about these tiny, repeated signals that, over time, reshape the entire architecture of who you are. Every thought, every action, every focus is a brushstroke painting the picture of your future self. The brain doesn't ask for perfection, it just responds to consistency. And the truth is, you already have the tools. You're already shaping your brain every single day. The only real question is, are you doing it with intention or by accident? If this opened your eyes to how powerful your brain really is, imagine what happens when more people learn to harness it. That's why I'd love for you to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more science-backed insights into how to master your mind. Because the journey to rewiring your brain is just beginning, and together, we can keep exploring how to unlock its full potential.